People are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
You're suggesting that the emphasis on domicile was not a part of the rule, meaning he wasn't saying you had to be like a foreigner who is doing everything they can and who can't be naturalized, but he might have emphasized those facts in this case precisely because Chinese immigrants were unwanted, precisely because he had to get this out into the public, and people were going to say, whoa, you're saying these people have to, this baby has to be a citizen? And so one could imagine that it was important from a standpoint of helping people accept this citizen rule under these circumstances to emphasize that these particular people in this case were in Justice Alito's first category.
I think that is very possible, Justice Jackson.
So the arguments today, they stem from President Trump's day one executive order restricting birthright citizenship. The president, he's argued that babies born to people in the U.S. illegally or temporarily should not automatically become U.S. citizens. With these oral arguments wrapped now, the justices will now consider whether that is constitutional. But that has faced a lot of criticism, Nicole, including from groups who have been outside the court all morning. The plaintiffs in this case, they argue that this...
And the reason why that I can voice my opinion about this is the fact that a lot of these people know this law. They use it as a loophole. They purposely come over here knowing that they're either going to become impregnated or they're already pregnant before they come over here, pertaining to the females. And once they get over here, they have a child, and automatically the child is eligible for all the same entitlements that it would have been if you would have lived here all your life. If your parents would have lived here all your life. And if your parents' parents would have lived here all your life. It's just appalling to me that so many foreigners has come over here to abuse our Constitution and abuse our privileges. And what really makes me sick is that you have so many right now senior citizens or those that truly does need assistant help pertaining to those that's disabled that are struggling so dearly, so desperately, and they can't get no extra help. They can't get no extra help because of various circumstances. I'm going to use this for instance, Doge, Elon Musk, that come in there with a chainsaw wanting to cut up everything, basically take a wrecking ball and just tear up everything that's ever been brought into existence as pertaining to our United States privileges and our entitlements. They raised a great deal of people's Social Security up to purposely bring them over the threshold to the degree that now they was no longer eligible for that extra help because of the price of medications. It would have been better if they'd have just left the payroll deal alone to keep everybody below that threshold. That way they could have continued to have gotten that extra help. Now you have people out there that truly do need that medication that's basically either becoming sick or dying on account of it, or literally dying on account of it. Now you can't tell me that that's not evilly motivated whenever you're taking your own citizenship, your own sovereign citizens here in America, or even those abroad, and all of a sudden you cut their benefits off because you raised it up on one end by saving money on the other. You know how much money that they claim they're going to save this year? Something like $1 trillion off of the medical industry alone, off of the healthcare industry alone. You know who's going to pay for that? We are. Us American citizens that was promised that as long as we worked legally, legitimately, we paid our taxes, at the end of our lifespan, or if something happened to us to the degree that we was involved in something major or our health broke down, that we would still be taken care of. But yet no, they want to give all these entitlements to all these women that come over here that's got a baby, and now all of a sudden their parents didn't give nothing into the system, their parents didn't give nothing into the system, and on and on and on, and now all of a sudden you're going to give the same entitlements to these children that come over here that probably, I ain't going to say all of them, but probably a great deal of them, they probably don't have no idea who their daddy is to begin with. And now all of a sudden you're going to give them the same type of entitlements that of those that has lived here all their lives, and their parents has lived here all their lives, and their parents' parents has lived here all their lives. Based around the 14th Amendment, I think it does need to be re-examined regarding how the system is being abused. That's just like freedom of religion. Whenever our ancestors sat down and wrote the Declaration of Freedom of Religion, for surely to God you didn't think, or a logical person shouldn't think, that intended for people to come over here and start practicing witchcraft, or start practicing Satanism, or start practicing being a Wiccan, or being a Hinduism or a Buddhism. No. That was based around Christianity concept, that if you believed in Christianity, you had the right to believe in Christianity. If you didn't believe in Christianity, you had that right too. You didn't have to believe in nothing. But as far as you coming over here and practicing witchcraft, coming over here and practicing all these other different, I'm going to call them occults, that is not what our ancestors had in mind. So they're coming over here, they're remodifying our laws, they're reconstructing our intent towards what the law was put in place to begin with, and they're basically changing the whole dynamics of the Constitution. To me, that is absolutely appalling that we do not have smart enough, intelligent people that can look through the smokescreen and realize what that these people are doing. I want to use one other illustration that Donald Trump was very adamant on, pertaining to the football players and the baseball players and all the other sports arena people, basically in the national eye, that would do things purposely to dishonor our Pledge of Allegiance. There is nobody this side of the bad place that can convince me that our ancestors intended that if you wanted to take an American flag and take it in front of the White House and purposely degrade it, disrespect it, burn it, do whatever to it, there is nobody that can convince me that our ancestors intended for us to have the right to do that here in America. Because I promise you, you go to some of these other countries and you start doing stuff like that, you will either be put in jail or possibly be put to death. Possibly be put to death. Just like you go to Saudi Arabia, you start practicing true, authentic Christianity over there. First of all, if you get caught with a Bible over there, it's immediate fine. Second of all, if you get caught over there preaching and trying to change the concept of those people's culture over there, you'll be arrested and possibly even put to death. They actually have the right to putting people in, not only in straps, but they have the right over there of putting you to death if you go over there and start practicing Christianity. It's called Martyrs for Christ. There are people right now in Africa, right now in probably over at least a dozen plus countries that are being persecuted tremendously because of them believing in the Lord Jesus Christ. And it really got to the point during Obama era, and I brought this out before, that it had got to the point that if you put out a Christmas nativity scene at your house or even at a church, you was prone of not only getting ridiculed from the public, but you was prone of possibly even going before a judge and them ordering for you to remove it from your premises. Now, friends, whenever the Antichrist demonic spirit starts having dominance over our Christianity spirit, then we got a problem. We got a severe problem. Now, if the people across the road over here, give or take around a quarter of a mile, if they want to practice their religion pertaining to the Wiccans, or Hinduism, or Buddhism, or Satanism, or any other kind of isms, that's up to them. They can do whatever that they want to do. But don't think that you got a right of persecuting me because of the right that I have of honoring the Lord Jesus Christ. And for darn sure, don't think that you have a right in coming over here and bringing distress into my life towards aggravation, torment, terrorizing my life, simply because you don't agree with my Christianity philosophies. And that's exactly what happened in Northwest Tennessee. And I'll say that in front of Tommy Moore. I'll say that in front of Judge Tommy Moore. I'll say that in front of any other judge or any other law enforcement person that stands behind the rule of law here in Northwest Tennessee. That's exactly what my brother and I was going through. And it went on and on and on for a period of 3 years, to the degree that it helped to put him in an early grave. I don't care what anybody says. Whenever you're being agitated and aggravated on that level, to the point that you're having somebody drive by here, sometimes even 4 or 5 different people drive by here and throw out accusations and aggravate you and torment you and wouldn't let my brother sleep and honk the horn and keep the horn laid down, sometimes 7, 8, 10 times a day. And this went on for a consistency of 3 years. You can't tell me that that won't have a profound effect upon somebody's health, especially after you've hired attorneys and you went in front of the courts over here in Weakley County, Dresden, Tennessee, and you still can't get nothing done. I couldn't even get the judge to rule off on something common pertaining to disorderly conduct. It was unbelievable, the fight that David Jeffrey Jackson and myself was engaged in whenever I first moved back here in trying to reestablish my life. And I wasn't passing out no Bible material. I wasn't going around house to house knocking on people's doors. I wasn't putting literature up underneath people's windshield washers. I wasn't meeting them coming out of the factories, greeting them with my philosophy. I was being very, very moderately conservative towards staying with myself. And because of the material that I had put out previous in my life, that was what was haunting not only myself, but my brother, that helped to put him in an early grave. And I'll tell at least, give or take, around a dozen different families that was engaged in this type of torment down here. I will tell them to their face that one day they will have that to have to give an account for, of the way that they was falsely accusing us and even accusing me of having sex with my brother and killing my brother and poisoning my brother and me being a pedophile and all the other stuff. I mean, even after my brother died, I was still having people come by here that was screaming out stuff that was profanity in a conservative type way, not counting the things that they was actually saying. And to think that the courts up here in Dresden, Tennessee allowed for that to occur, as long as it occurred, because I'm telling you right now, I can prove that on average, we was contacting the law enforcement sheriff's department up here in Dresden, Tennessee, on average, twice, possibly 2 to 3 times a month for a consistency of 3 years before my brother died. And they decided to do a, I guess you'd call it a backdraft in actually coming at me in my weakest moment whenever I was most vulnerable. Less than 10 days after my brother had died, now I'm sitting up here in the county mountie being charged for stalking because my brother and I was concerned about 3 little children that was across the road that their lifestyles was being illegitimately handled by illegitimate parents. And to think that I had to plead guilty to a charge like that pertaining to stalking, just like I pleaded guilty to another charge up in Kentucky over 2 non-threatening telephone calls going back to the law enforcement agency there in LBL pertaining to Dwayne Camry and Gary Hawkins and his wife Lisa Hawkins. To think that they have marred me and scarred me this way, and now having a Class C felony on my life, it's appalling. It's appalling. And what is going on right now As far as I'm concerned, it couldn't have happened to a better group of people pertaining to being $39+ trillion, not knowing from one day to another of whether or not we're going to see a major school shooting or a major this or a major that or possibly a terrorist attack upon to the motherland. Do I hate it that it's happening? Yes. Yes, I hate it immensely, especially happening to the lives of the innocent people that didn't have nothing to do with this. But I promise you, going back into the Reagan and the Bush era, somebody's going to give an account for this because we're going to get down to the bottom of it. There are certain people that demand justice in what has happened to America right now.
So we are in weird times in the United States of America. But if you just look at the legal arguments as presented by the briefs, and if you look at the precedent around this case that has been decided,